At one point, I'd say over half our faculty had worked on the show in some capacity or other. I was lucky to have, a pretty substantial recurring role, so
Hmm.
I get more than my fair share of attention from the fan base. But oh yeah, like I'm sure especially the hardcore fans would recognize almost everybody who worked at that school at one point or another. Yeah.
Tell me about the audition.
The audition. Again, a beautiful question. I remember it like it was yesterday. So it was in Carol Kelsey's office. I was thinking about this last night because I was curious if we'd get into it. I'm pretty sure I did two auditions. Again, everything is self-tape now. I'm sure you understand that. It's very different place now. But yeah, in the old days, and I would have, I wasn't young then, but I was in the Stargate to me was my major breakthrough. I'd worked a couple of good gigs before then, but that was my first recurring role, etc. But anyway, so Carol would have had me into the office. I think on no, you know what? Maybe she saw me once before I went in front of the producers and the director, but I do remember the producer director session. And there were more people in that room than I'd ever encountered before. In my head, there's as many as 7. It could have been as few as 5. But Garrity was there for sure. I don't.
Brad Wright probably would have been there.
Brad Wright, 100%.
Yeah.
Bless Brad. Just love that man. Anyway, so the room was packed, so that made me a little bit nervous. Carol was, I don't know, I think she's out of the business entirely now, but she was one of the best casting directors that there was. She was quite often the reader too, which was not always the case, but she was that day. So if I remember correctly, I was reading off of Carol. We were doing the scene in the hospital bed where I'm talking to Diana and getting her to release me from my bonds. And
so the Goa'uld's already taken over in the scene that you're doing. Okay.
Right. I might have done another scene from that. I probably did do, but that was the deal maker, if you ask me. I remember, like, this is like I've always had good emotional access. I'm sure you know what that means, but for an actor to have the ability to go to like all the extreme emotional places, and I read the sides and I'm like, holy shit, this is totally my thing, my oeuvre, and so in the audition. I'm talking to Carol as Diana. And at the perfect moment, the tear rolls down my face, ploink onto my shirt. I heard a noise from Garrity or Brad, not a gasp, but a sound, a sigh of like, yes, like this is what we're looking for. Because you have, like, for Diana to believe, then the audience has to believe. Like, it's and so I was in the moment, and Adrian / the Goa'uld was such a good liar that I nailed it. And I wasn't sure that I got it, but I got the phone call about 3 days later, and I must admit, I don't want to sound too arrogant, but I wasn't surprised.
I did a good job in that one.
Yeah. I was thrilled beyond measure. Like it was definitely, I would say that was the most exciting moment in my career, because if I had a launching place or a lift up point, it was that moment when I got the call from my agent that Carol had said, yeah, the guys on Stargate want you. And as I said, the hope was at that point that Adrian was going to last for at least two full seasons, and the plan was at that point for there to be multiple episodes. I can tell you why later why that didn't end up playing out, but yeah, it was a huge high and very exciting for me.
We had never seen I don't think we'd ever seen a character confined to a wheelchair yet. I think part of it because the getting up the Stargate ramp to go to other planets would be rather tricky. But there was, it was one of those situations where when you're looking at the body of work that the show had done and where it was going, it wasn't surprising that the show asked the question at some point, if you have unlimited money and unlimited resources and access to knowledge of what the government is doing with extraterrestrials, because you're running tech firms that are connecting with them in some way, what would a person whose chips were completely down do when they were in this situation? How far would they go? And that's Adrian Conrad.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So how did you make a meal of that?
How do you mean, David?
I mean, as your approach to this character going in, how did you want to make the audience empathize with him? Did you not care about audience sympathy? Did you care about, okay, this is just the drive of this character? What was your approach to having the audience relate to this human being while he's got one of our heroes pinned to a bed?
Interesting. I mean, there's in terms of my overall experience on the show, like I spend very little time as actual Adrian Conrad. Like it's
mostly
pretty
Goa'uld.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty quick. In terms of Adrian, it was a combination of two things. One is ego and one is desperation. Now that I'm older, I kind of get it better, and I've lost so many people that I hadn't. At that point in time, my mom was still alive, but she was very, very sick. So I was conscious of what I would do for my mother. And that would certainly involve, I mean, even more so than myself, without knowing fully what the Goa'uld the impact that would have on the host, I would not do that to my mother, of course, but I would do almost anything to have my mother still alive on the planet. So those kinds of urges I understood. The ego, I think, again, a huge part of acting training is about, our desire to be famous or to be somebody or to be seen, to be acknowledged, to have our insecurities wiped away and to have our true self, whatever that might be, validated by a huge number of people. That kind of ego is, I think it's in all of us. And so that having done a lot of work in my training, as that part was relatively easy. I think the harder part for me was playing him post-op or post-insertion, or is there some
implantation?
There we go. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Right. Post-implantation. It was just dumb ass fun, because I got to be, again, a huge fan of sci-fi, and Alien was an old film even by then. I don't know how old, but I think Alien came out in
78 or 79. Yeah.
Right. And, that movie changed my life forever. So just the notion of having a creature inside me, maybe not a chest buster, but, there were, or Carpenter's The Thing, right? Like, again, that was a movie that I saw in high school. So I think as for reference points, those two films, which bear some similarity to, Adrian's storyline, it was just a thrill for me to be this all-powerful other.
Thanks for watching this clip from Dial the Gate. You can find the full live stream shows on our YouTube channel or visit dialthegate.com for the complete schedule. See you on the other side.